if Billy still is the coach, which I would say is the direction we're going, what is he going to need to bring to this team for Florida to win 9-10 games as you would hope that you would in year 4? So I tasked you with going through the offense. I went through the defense. Let's start with I'll start with you on the offense where you want to start.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's look at I think the quarterback position first of all, because I think obviously the entire thing with bringing Billy back is that you're keeping DJ Lagway in the fold, keeping him around for a sophomore season in which he could be, a Heisman candidate. I think that might be a bit of a stretch to say right now, but I think he has looked good enough in the limited amounts that we've seen him to say that is a possible ceiling for him. But beyond him, I mean, I think we've seen this season, you need to have a better backup quarterback situation. I don't know if Aiden Warner or Clay Millen are that guy moving into next year. So I think, you look at obviously Tramel Jones, the guy they're trying to flip from Florida State. We'll see how that works out. I don't know if you want to be relying on a freshman for depth. I think you do need probably a backup quarterback. I think the running back room, honestly, like, maybe you try to find a guy, but I think you got to be feeling pretty good about the bodies in that running back room. Sorry,
we also do have 2 freshmen or 2 recruits committed, 1 4-star, 1 a 3-star. And if there's anybody that's on the staff that's been insanely impressive, you got to give it to Barge Luke.
Yeah, 100%. Has not a lot of the Billy carryover guys from Louisiana like lived up to the hype, but he's one that I think you could say has. But I mean, that kind of brings us to the people blocking for the run game, which is where I think is going to require the most work this offseason. I think you're going to need multiple portal starters, probably. I mean, Brandon Crenshaw Dixon's a redshirt senior, so going to be moving on from him this year. And, I just don't know how great you feel about, guys like Damian George, who didn't play on Saturday. I think you probably feel pretty good about Austin Barber and Jake Slaughter, assuming both of them come back. They both certainly have the opportunity to do so. But I think they'll be looking for some help on the right side of the offensive line and really at the interior spots. I think when you talk about, the idea of Florida going really hard in the portal this year, I think that's a big part of it is going to be going and getting proven offensive line talent, which is not an easy thing to do. It's kind of been 50-50 in whether that actually works when teams try to do that. And in the receiving game, I mean, I think you're going to lose some production. Like you've got Elijah Badger is going to be moving on. DK is going to be moving on. But, and I think, and this is not like reporting, this is just speculation. I think you can, I kind of feel like Trey Wilson's probably going to be moving on. Wouldn't surprise me at least. I would operate as if he's not going to be there, and if he is, great. But I think you like some of what you're seeing from young receivers. You like maybe Tank Hawkins with his speed, but I think transfer receiver gonna be massively necessary. Again, I think you hit it pretty well with DK and Badger this offseason. You got what you needed from those guys. I think you need to go do it again and probably do something more along the lines of like a Juice Wells type move, kind of looking back at this past cycle, like a move of that caliber. Again, if for nothing else, because you got to sell, this class you're bringing in, sell another year at Billy. And truthfully, maybe you got to find a tight end too, because I thought Arliss Boardingham would have a big season. And he really hasn't, has been kind of MIA the last few weeks.
Yep.
And Hayden Hanson's a good player, but he's not really a big factor in the receiving game.
Yeah. Going back to the offensive line, one name that we could see in the transfer portal, I'm not saying he's going to 100% enter. Deion Sanders, do we think he's going to be coaching Colorado next year? I mean, losing his sons.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people say that, like that he's kind of staying through his son, like just to coach his sons. And like, maybe that's the case. But I think he's got a real opportunity here to build something pretty good at Colorado. So, and I'm not sure if the better job is going to come calling this cycle, just with the Florida's probably being a cycle away from opening as things currently stand. I think everyone in general is going to be kind of slow to make a lot of big moves in this cycle with the uncertainty. So
where I was getting to that with, they have a 5-star freshman offensive tackle, Big Gator target last year, Jordan Seaton. He's been absolutely amazing for them. And he's only a freshman, probably Colorado's best offensive lineman already. If Dion leaves, I guarantee he's going to enter the portal. We know he has a good relationship with our staff. If we're going to be dishing out all that money that Pete Nako says we are, I feel like he's going to be one of those top names that we have to go after. And then, so going on just from him, Seaton, center Jake Slaughter, he's been grading out as, I think, the best center in the SEC, one of the best centers in college football. We could see him go to the draft. Barber's been really good as well. We could see both those guys go for the draft. I think our young talent in the offensive line is there right now to make up for it, because you have 4 stars like Fletcher Westfall, Roderick Kearney, Jason Zandamilla, Marcus Maskell, and Caden Jones, who we heard a lot about Caden Jones in the offseason. So I bet they have a lot of high hopes for him. So I definitely want to see us go after maybe 1 or 2, depending on how many people leave, transfers. Yeah. But I'd also love to see us get the young guys on the line to the standard. But then when you also look at the receiver room, if you have a QB like DJ Lagway returning, he alone is going to be able to sell himself 2 targets. We've also seen Billy be good with wide receivers in the transfer portal, with Ricky Pearsall, with Elijah Badger, with Chimere Dike, having his young receiver step up. You also bring in a 5-star in Vernell Brown, another 4-star in Nashawn Montgomery. There are some people hinting at some big-time name wide receiver in the SEC who is really looking at Lagway, and if Florida dishes up the money for him, there's a good chance that he would come to Florida. So I do think there's a good chance that we still have a good receiver room next year.
How about what if Ohio State loses to Indiana and Jeremiah Smith were to enter the transfer portal? Because Ryan Day gets fired is my implication there.
Yeah, I get Brian Hartline's gone. That's really the big thing there.
Yeah,
Brian Hartline.
Yeah,
I mean, if that happens, I do see if we're putting out that money, because Ole Miss's class was $10 million this year. That's what it was reported at, to bring in Walter Nolan, Princely, bunch of defensive guys who I'll get into.
Yeah.
How many of those big names could we go after? I mean, every Gator fan wanted Jeremiah Smith to come here originally. So I would definitely love to get him here next year when he's proven to be one of the best receivers in college football already.
Yeah, no, 100%.
All right, so we're going to get into the defense. I want to start off with what I think the biggest need is. So I'm going to name some names off for you. Tell me if you notice a pattern or a theme. Isaiah Hamilton, Brandon Turnage, Yam Banks, Trey Amos, Lewis Moore, Chris Graves, Jordan Kennedy, and John Saunders. Do you know these guys at all?
I mean, I know you just listed a lot of Ole Miss's defense.
Yeah, so these are I didn't count them, but that's all but one player in the Ole Miss secondary was recruited, or in the 2 deep of the Ole Miss secondary was recruited by Ole Miss. The rest of these guys, that was like 8 players I just named, all were transfers. So what Florida needs to do for that safety and maybe cornerback room, maybe a little less, we need to go into the transfer portal and especially the safety room, get like 2-3 transfer safeties. Maybe Asa Turner next year will get a red shirt so he can come back and have his final season. But Jordan Castell, unless you somehow see him take that improvement, you can't risk it. You need to go and get some all SEC level safety out the portal. Jason Marshall probably being the only corner to leave, maybe like Jakeem Jackson. He's been dealing with injury, so I wouldn't say that right now. But so maybe you want to go also get a cornerback 1 to go along with Devin Moore and Dijon and Cormani. But really what I'm focused on is that safety room. You're also going to be losing Trequez Bridges and DJ Douglas, 2 one-year safety guys. Bridge has been really good for us. Douglas, not as much. But the star room as well, you still have Gates and Denson, who are looking fantastic. So we also do bring in a true freshman, Ben Hanks, who's currently rated in the top 100, the 247 composite. So he is a good name to bring in for a corner. No safeties. We do have a young player, Greg Smith, was a 4-star. He has the frame, a high potential guy, but you still just need to go in and get 3 safeties to come in next year and really revamp this DB room.
Yeah, I think what you just said there, the main line was you can't afford it. Like you can like these guys and these young players in the secondary, but you can't
Mhm.
afford to run the risk of going into another offseason relying on unproven young depth guys. You just can't do it because we've gotten burned multiple times before, you know?
Mhm. Absolutely. So next, the linebacker room. So most of the year, I have felt really good about this linebacker room. I'm starting to get some questions though about going into next year. So one, Shamar James, I feel like he hasn't been as good as I wanted him to be. I don't know if there's maybe a system or a culture fit that's not really working out right now. You did have Jay Bateman leave this room, which maybe that hindered him a bit. And Patrick Tony left after his first year, and they were really close. I know that. So maybe there's some type of culture thing that's going on there with Shamar James. Maybe he does return for his senior season. Maybe he gets a lot of draft attention or some reason. So I think you do need to go look at linebackers. Maybe not a star because we're talking about all these star players you want to get. You can't get all of them, but you do. Oh,
I'm sorry.
all right,
I'm
you're
sorry.
good. You're good.
I like backed out.
Okay, it's okay. But I was always saying you can't get all of these star players. So sometimes you just have to go for guys who are okay and maybe some depth pieces because we are going to return two true sophomores in Pup Howard and Miles Graham, as well as Jada Robinson, who I think's really been a big surprise that he is stepping up. So you return those guys. So I would like us to get one guy in the portal, but I feel like overall the linebacker room is good. Just maybe one guy, depending on how Shamar goes. We do have a 3-star who flipped from Alabama, Miles Johnson, committed. Do you have anything you want to say on the linebacker room?
I mean, not really. I think, probably a strength of the team
Mm-hmm.
on defense right now, I would say, in terms of the future outlook. I mean, I'm not sure if there's any area I would say you don't need any help at all, but
No.
I think that's assuming you're not suffering a ton of attrition there. I think you got to feel pretty good about where that room's looking.
And then the next room, so outside linebacker, they line up off the ball. They sometimes line up on the line. We're looking at George Gums. I think he's probably been the most surprising good player on this defense. He was a wide receiver when he went to Northern Illinois, converted to linebacker, defensive end, whatever you want to call it. He converted there, and I feel like he's been really good for this team. Good pass rush. He should have had the interception against Texas, but I feel like he's a really good player. He's as well as backed up by a young guy in Aaron Childs. So I feel like that room's good. Maybe there's a guy in the portal you like who's a young guy that can, after Gums leaves, he can be like the backup to Childs. But that room I think is pretty good. And then, so going off to the more defensive end, edge position, even. So I think the biggest need here, we need an elite player. I like Tyreek Sapp. Joey Slackman's going to be leaving. We do bring in a guy like Jalen Wiggins, who is near the top 100. He's committed as a freshman. I like Sapp. I like Cameron James. I like Justice Boone. James maybe a higher bit of upside. But none of those guys really scream like disruptor. Like none of those guys are going to have like a 10-sack season next year. So I think what we need to do, go into the portal. We need to go and get like a Nick Scorton, or Tennessee has like a James Pierce. We need to go get one of those guys to help this team take it to the next level. Because right now, unless you're scheming something up, it's just not there with the pass rush. They can't really win money one-on-ones. I mean, I assume you agree. Yeah.
No, I do. I think that it's just not good enough. And I think we thought looking at guys like Justice Boone coming into this year, like maybe it could be. But it's just not. And, I think, maybe LJ McCray can kind of be that guy, kind of help get you some disruption there. I haven't really seen a ton of gotten the opportunity to see a ton of it this year, I would say. But I mean, I think, it's just not where it needs to be. And I think I would agree if I'm looking to spend a lot of cash in the transfer portal this offseason, I would say outside of the secondary, nowhere more I'm trying to invest it than in getting a primo edge rusher.
Yeah, you also got Jack Pyburn, who's a really good run stuffer. Not as much of a pass rusher, but really good run stuffer. Probably on the opposite side of that elite edge rusher you want. But then going to the defensive nose tackle, defensive tackle, switch it out a bit. So we will be losing Cam Jackson and Desmond Watson, two, big bodies for us who have been really solid in the run stopping department. So guys we have on the current roster. So guys probably gotten forgot about. Jamari Lyons. He got a season-ending injury before the season. Last year as a freshman, I thought he showed a lot of potential. So I do like him going into next year. You also have Mekhi Barrow, who I didn't expect to do as well as he's done as a true freshman, and DeAndre Robinson. I don't know if Robinson is as much of a nose tackle as the other two are, but I do think, assuming this team wants to be at a 10-level win next year with the transfer portal class, you do need to go and get a good nose tackle in next year for next season.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the entirety of the defensive line this year, while I would say it hasn't been like I don't think the front seven's been as bad as we thought it could be.
No.
I think it's not where it needs to be. So I fully agree. I think both interior and on the outside defensive line, you got to find some portal help.
You do have a guy like Stephon Shivers. He's a recruit who just decommitted from Georgia, has two visits scheduled with Florida. I mean, I don't know if you saw the picture of this guy. This is one of the most jacked high school players I have ever seen. Like Branson Robinson, when he went to Georgia, his thighs, like everyone was talking about how big he is. I mean, this guy has the arms. He could be someone that's like a true disruptor for us in the future. But for next season, we definitely need to go look at somebody in the portal. But I think if we can do some of those things we've said, because we're obviously not going to go get elite players at the offensive line, wide receiver, safety, linebacker, or edge roam. I think if we can do a couple of those things, have some young players develop going into 2025, we could have a good season.
Yeah, no, fully.